Welcome to another episode of the Whitest Mexican You Know. Obviously, I'm your host, Antonio. Every week I try to have some of the greatest local Las Vegas comedians on. This week is no different. This week I have Reese. What the hell is your last name? I don't know your last name. Russell.
Yeah, I go by Reese the writer.
That's what I know you as. And I was like, pretty sure that's not his last name. But Reese the writer. What's up, brother? How you doing?
Well, how are you, Antonio?
Not bad. I'm getting through my day. You know, I got my beer, like always.
I'm with it. That's a Heineken.
Fucking alcoholic, you know, you can't get past it. But I want to start off a couple things. We were talking before the podcast, and you brought up a very interesting point that I want to keep talking about saying how, you know, mostly you're not a comic, you're a writer. You know, you go by Reese the writer. Makes sense. And you said jokes aren't important. Now, what actually made you come to that conclusion? Because as a fan of stand-up comedy, like all my life, that's the meat of it. You know what I mean? And so to strip that all away, it doesn't make sense to me. Fully.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to a lot of people. Yeah. And I'm not even sure it makes sense to me. It's just the approach that I take, not valuing jokes. Like, I used to be fearful of like people stealing jokes that I had. For a while. Like, that was my main goal. I was like, I don't want anybody to steal my joke. I don't want anybody to steal my joke. And I thought about it, and I started wondering, could I stop anybody from doing so? No. Can't stop anybody from taking a joke. Yeah. If a famous comedian takes it or somebody in the next state over takes it. And I said, what is the downside of somebody taking your joke? And I thought about it. I write so much that to me, it really wouldn't matter. If somebody took something that was personal to me or anything, they couldn't, because it would be so specific to what I'm talking about that they wouldn't really it wouldn't really fit them. And as far as like I'm not saying personality is everything when it comes to stage presence, but I don't think jokes matter as much as a lot of people think they do. We're talking about, go ahead.
But do you think like you were saying, taking like a personal thing, excuse me, like taking a personal thing from you, don't you think that's like because it's a more personal story, and let's say like a more professional comedian takes it, so if you say, you know, he stole my joke, nobody believes you, like that's taking a piece of who you are away from you?
I don't think so.
No?
No.
That's how I would look at it.
And that's how I just thought about, like, I don't think, we were talking about your favorite comedian, Doug Stanhope, right? Yeah. And I asked you if he's your favorite comedian. I said, if you took away all of his jokes that he's ever written, would Doug Stanhope still be your favorite comedian? And I think he would, because he would come up with different stories or different jokes and still be. You can't take away somebody's success story. The grind that he has, the passion that he has, the cream is going to rise to the top regardless. Yeah. So I always look at it, if somebody takes my joke, they needed it more than I needed it. And also, if I'm not good enough to be able to write something else, then I shouldn't have been in that position. If I have one joke that I say all the time that makes me famous, and it eventually doesn't work anymore, or I grow out of it, because you grow out of jokes. Yeah. Somebody has a special, that joke is gone. So they have to, again, start at the bottom of the mountain and climb to the top. So I just took the value out of any specific jokes, and I just get good at writing jokes in general.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's, because I'm still stuck on like the personal story. So even if it's a personal story of yours, you take the value out of it.
Yeah, because you have, how many personal stories do we have in our lifetime?
Yeah,
there's thousands. We have thousands of things. Yeah. I feel like I went to another level in my comedy when I started talking about things that I was scared of talking about, like living in my car was like one of the things one of the best things that ever happened to me. It was like, I lived in my car in LA when I was doing stand-up. And I didn't ever want to talk about that, because I was like, I was ashamed and a lot of things. But like that, with me and doing that, was one of the best things that's ever happened. And with that, I have thousands of stories of nights where I slept in my car, going to stand up, going to my job and coming back. And if I, as a creator, can't come up with another story involving that, if I say a joke or a story that somebody takes or bombs, if you have a joke that fails, that you think is the best story in the world, and it fails, you're either not good enough to say it, or it wasn't very funny in the beginning to begin with. So I throw away jokes all the time.
Yeah.
Like out of 100 jokes that I write, I probably throw away 98 of them.
Damn.
Until I get one. And it's not because they're not good. I have people coming to me quite a bit actually telling me, yeah, that joke you used to do was really good. I'm like, yeah, but I didn't like it. So if it's not important to me, and it's not something that I feel, or it's not part of the vibe that I'm going with, it doesn't matter.
Because that is one thing, like, if the audience can pick up that you're not passionate about what you're saying, then they don't care. You know, so you have to give a shit about what you're saying so that they give a shit to follow your train of thought.
For sure.
That makes sense.
I look at it like, when I get off a stage, I don't care if people say, hey, that joke that you said up there was pretty good. I'd rather hear you're funny. You are funny to me is way more valid of a compliment than saying, hey, that joke you did was really good. Because if somebody could steal my joke and say it, then I wasn't good enough at writing it anyway. Because if somebody could take something that's like that intertwined in my life and be able to say it and get the same laughs that I do, I wasn't good enough at writing it. Somebody else should take my joke.
Well, the way that I see it is that you were good enough at writing it because no matter who performs it, they can get the same types of laughs. You know what I mean? So it's not like a specific thing to you and how you perform it. It's a beautifully written joke that if you said it or I said it, everybody laughs.
But what's that say about you as a comedian then?
It says more about you as a writer.
Exactly. And me being a writer, I'm like, I don't mind. Like, I'll let anybody come over and tell me or talk to me about their jokes. Hey, if you do this, you do this. If they want advice or whatever, if they give me advice, it's just I typically look at my personality, look at my stage presence, look at all the other things, and I could fill in I never go on stage with anything in mind either.
Yeah.
So I never have jokes that I'm going on stage and I'm like, yeah, I'm about to tell this. I get on stage, I have a feeling, and then I just go.
Okay. So you're like, you kind of write on stage.
I'll write both. Like on stage, well, I write so much off stage that when I get on stage, I could take like a concept and expand on it just because I typically know where I want to go or where I don't want to go with it. But I write off stage, write on stage, I freestyle. So it just, I'm not trying to say that I'm all that, but to me, it's not that important. And understanding that has gotten me to the next level of like, you're going to say some jokes that suck. You're going to say some jokes that are really good. You're going to say, I record everything that I've ever written. Yeah. And go on stage, I record everything that I've ever said. So there's hundreds of sets that I could go back to and be like, all right, I'm not feeling in the best moment right now. Let me see what I said a year ago on this date. And I'll go check that out. And most of the time it's back. It's always back. So it's like I tend to like not care about the moment. I just typically care about like what I'm feeling and what I want to express to the audience.
Okay. And so like if you get off stage and somebody comes up to you and says, hey, that bit that you were doing, like that's fucking gold. Do you take that and, you know, take it back to your writing sessions and figure out, or like listen to the recordings and try to figure out like where the points in that bit like actually hit and try to, you know, expand on it? Or do you just repeat it the way it was, or do you just shelf it all together?
Not at all. It just depends. I typically don't take advice from people, like at all. It is not, because I don't know if we're on the same wavelength of what we think is funny. I could go on. I don't typically ever judge my sets until I go home and listen to it. So I'll do a whole 5 or 10 minute set, and people are like, "Hey man, you did great, or you did bad, or whatever." And I wouldn't have or they'll say, "How'd you do tonight?" I'll be like, "I don't know. I got to go home and listen to it because I'm the only judge of what I think is funny."
But do you think that can get in your way? Because I'm super self-critical of myself. You know, so it's like when I listen to a set, my girlfriend could have seen that set and was like, "Oh, you did great," and I could have gotten a bunch of laughs. But listening to it back, I'm like, this part, like, I fucked that. Fuck this part, and I'm super self-critical sometimes. But sometimes it could be to my detriment. You know what I mean? To where I can't leave well enough alone.
I don't think that's.
You don't think that's a thing?
I don't think a bit's ever done. ever.
Interesting.
You could have it perfect to where you get your laughs or whatever, but going on stage, I tend to expect. I don't think a joke's ever done until it goes into a special. Once you put something into a special, it's done.
Okay, but I mean, if you think about it, a special is just another set that you've done. So how do you know when it's ready to be put in a special if you've never left it alone? You know, if you're constantly tweaking things, you could tweak it in a wrong way and then want to take that to the special and then realize, oh shit, I should have left it the way it was.
No, you gotta prepare. You can only prepare so much until you get there. But I'm a constant corrector, constant changer. I wrote one of the first jokes that I ever wrote. I probably wrote it. If I looked at my phone, I probably wrote it 250, 300 different times.
No, damn.
And it's the downsides of having a big dick.
Okay.
It's one of. I probably bombed with that joke. I wrote it 250 times. I probably bombed with it 249 times.
Yeah.
And I finally got it to a point where I liked it. And then I changed it again. It's just I'm a constant progress because it's the only person that matters to me is me on my opinion of what I'm putting out. Okay. And I feel like you have to be that way in order to be successful. Because if somebody can tell you, hey man, if you don't like a joke, I don't care if I don't like a joke, I don't care how many people tell me, oh, I loved it. Don't matter.
Yeah.
It matters nothing to me because I'm the person that is saying it. So I have to go home, check out what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, scrap it, rewrite it.
Yeah.
I feel like you have to be the master of your own material to be able to go forward and advance. Because if I'm going and listening to somebody else tell me anything about my set and they don't know the path or the way that I'm going,
then it doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't mean nothing.
Yeah.
Obviously, audience laughter matters.
Yeah.
I typically get laughs, but I can get laughs of saying literally nothing most of the time.
Yeah.
So it's just what I want to process. What story do I want to say? What feeling do I want the audience to have?
Okay. And so, like you say, you write all the time. So what is the writing process like for you? Do you get an idea and then you try to, boil it down to its roots and, come up with a bunch of different paths you can go with it? Do you start with a punchline or a funny phrase, expand on that, or how does it go?
Most of the time, punchlines come to me. Funny punchlines in my head come to me, and then I'll create a story behind that. I write a lot of one-liners that I didn't know that's what I did. I started recently looking. A lot of mine are one-liners, and then I create a story behind the one-liner. So the joke that I'm getting to is always going to land for the most part. Now, if I mess up on the story, that's a whole nother. And I mess up on the story a lot of the times. I'll take the story one different direction, but I feel like as long as I get to the landing, as long as I know from point A and I'm going to point B, then none of the middle matters. I look at it like this. If you're going to, and I think I got this from Patrice O'Neal, if you're going to the grocery store, that's 2 miles down the road, and you know that's your destination, you could take a left when you leave your house, you could take a right, you could go down the street, you go up the street. None of that matters until you get to the store.
Yeah.
You're getting to the store.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter if you take as long as you're getting there to the store, then you know. Now, if you get to the store and it's closed, that's a bad day for you. But then I'll rewrite the story. I'll rewrite the punchline. I'll rewrite the jokes. It's just typically what is the best way that I want the audience. And I don't always want laughs when I don't always want the punchline to end on a laugh. Sometimes I want them to moan. Sometimes I want them to grunt. Sometimes I want them to be disgusted. Sometimes I want to. So I don't look at laughter as the only factor of why I write.
You brought up Patrice O'Neal, and he has that great quote where he says, comedy isn't to have 100% of the people laughing 100% of the time. It's having 50% of the people laughing, the other 50% horrified.
Exactly.
And that's what I like too.
I don't typically go that route because I don't typically have grotesque. He's a master, so he could do whatever he wants, and I'm not on his level. But as far as me, sometimes I don't want I don't want the story to end on somebody. Of course, I want the punchline and it'll hit where I want it to.
Yeah.
But I want to trick you. If every 5 seconds you're getting a laugh and the audience is laughing, to me, anybody can do that. You just say one line or get them to laugh. One
Except for
line
me,
or get 'em to
motherfucker.
laugh.
Have you ever seen my set?
I have. You're funny. Stop being humble and modest. You're funny.
Motherfucker. I've eaten my dick so many times
You
on
got
stage.
to.
It's
I call it
insane.
eating a boot. Sometimes you got to chew on that leather boot, man.
Oh, it's the worst.
Being comfortable in silence is stage presence.
Yeah.
So if you're not getting a laugh, don't try to get out of it, because once you try to get out, if the audience senses that you're not getting a laugh, that you want to laugh when you're not getting a laugh, they're definitely not going to give it to you.
Yeah, or they'll laugh at you for the wrong reason.
Yeah, you can. I can sense the difference between somebody laughing with me or laughing at me too. So
Oh yeah.
I don't think it's. Yo, you good? Yeah, it's hitting hard over there.
God damn. Oh, because these fucking vapes sometimes they'll heat up the oil and like spit just hot fucking oil in your mouth, and that fucking
That does not sound attractive
No.
or appeasing at all. Not at all.
But again, it's addictive personality. I gotta have my nicotine. I wish I could chain smoke cigarettes in this
Nicotine,
room.
caffeine, and Heineken, baby. That's a good day.
That's how I function.
What typically do you like? What is your writing process when it comes to like? What do you start with? Do you typically start with a punchline, a funny idea, or?
A lot of the times it's a punchline. But the what do you call it? Most of my set so far has been stories, and so like I think of a story, and then think of a funny angle on it. Because a lot of times like my morphine addiction bit. If you just take morphine addiction and you give it to somebody, they're like, oh my God, like that sounds terrible. It's like, so how do I find the funny in it? And then the angle was a true story where I fell asleep eating pussy. I mean, it's
Fell
like,
asleep eating pussy.
yeah.
While on morphine.
Because it hits you in that way, man. It's like you just get super relaxed. My dick wasn't working, and so I tried to go down on her and just, I was out.
Your dick wasn't working because your brain was about to pass out,
Dude,
player.
so it's like just taking something like that and finding the funny in it, But recently I've been trying to I try to start with a premise and then develop a bit out of that. Because I've had a hard time writing one-liners. Like you were talking about, you're really good at it. I'm good at the story. I can paint a picture of a story that people want to follow, but it's hard for me to insert the lines here and there. That's where I really have trouble on. But recently I've been trying to just get a premise. Like one I'm working on is like, I hate sports. All right, why do I hate sports? And then just expand on it from there. But it's just finding the funny in it is the toughest part, or writing the what people are gonna laugh at. Because I can talk all day about why
What are
I hate
you
sports.
going to laugh at?
And that's
the only thing that matters.
But that's the hardest thing, is because I feel like I'm jaded to comedy. Like there are specific things that can make me laugh. Like when I watch comics, they could be a really good comic, but to out loud laugh at them, it takes a lot. Like I'm that type of guy who, if you say something funny, I go, that was funny. Like I'm not the outwardly laugh, because I'm so jaded to comedy at this point. I've been obsessed with comedy since I was like 14 years old, maybe even earlier. And so it's like I've heard so much funny that if you're not bringing it hard, then
You're
I'm
not
just
gonna laugh?
Yeah, then I'm just like, oh, that's clever, or oh, that's funny.
Oh yeah, I don't think clever is funny at all.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that clever is not funny. They're just it's smart comedy. Like, not to say that you can't be done with comedy, but if somebody's trying to be clever, just because you could put I love Jerry Seinfeld. I get a lot of my like writing advice from like a lot of the things that he says.
Okay.
Like he writes 2 hours a day, like his process of how he goes about stuff, and like shuts down. He'll close himself in a room, and his wife, his kids won't even be allowed to come in there.
Yeah.
He doesn't take any phone calls until like 11 a.m. Dope guy. But as far as like his stand-up, I typically find his stand-up clever, and it is. It's masterful. It's that puzzle. It's the puzzle that's perfectly put together.
Yeah.
And life is not perfectly put together for me or for anybody.
But then do you actually find it funny? Like when you watch his stand-up, are you looking at at it like analytically, where you're like, oh, that's a
I'm
really
definitely looking at
well-structured
I'm
joke?
definitely looking at it analytically,
Okay,
but I'm not typically laughing.
Okay,
He
okay.
has one of his what is his sucks and great. That's one of his bits he's been running for. He just did it in his last special, but he's been running that bit for probably 10 to 15 years.
Okay.
It's meticulously put together. It's not a single word out of place, not a single syllable that you could, if you take one syllable out of any of his like words, the joke won't work. And that's one of the most perfect jokes you could ever write. But as far as me looking at it and my style of comedy, it's not something that I would write, and it's not something that I laugh at.
Okay.
I just learned a lot from him about how he writes. I think failure is funny.
Yeah.
Failing is and he writes above the audience. And what I mean by like above the audience, he's smarter. He tends to be smarter than the audience. He tends to.
Yeah, I mean, you could tell that in his personality.
Exactly.
He's like, I'm better than you.
Exactly, and that's the type of comedy it is. But for me, I don't typically think that I am, or that's not the style of comedy that I like to push out. People don't want to hear about how perfect you are. They want to hear about you falling asleep while eating some pussy because you were on morphine. And that's not a perfectly crafted bit, but the story tends to get them to go, that doesn't make any damn sense. How did you do that? And that's the intriguing thing to me.
Yeah. And see, that's the thing. It's like I know a lot of those comics as well. It's like Mitch Hedberg. Like,
that's one of the first like comedians I got put onto when I turned like one of the first white comedians I got put onto because I was big into Def Comedy Jam and Comic View. I used to watch when I was 7 or 8 years old before I even imagined being into comedy. That's what I got. I was watching every single night. So I started dating a girl when I was 18. She was like 25, and she put me on a Mitch Hedberg. And he, to me, is hilarious because it doesn't make a lot of sense a lot of the time.
Yeah, and see that like he's the definition when you think of one-liner comic. Like he's the epitome of that. But the thing about it is like a lot of it is kind of like you said, kind of doesn't make any sense, and it's almost like you want to say it's hacky, but like he was the first one to do it, so it's not hacky.
It can't be. Like, they say Jerry Seinfeld's hacky too because of his observational, but he's the reason why observational comedy is what it is today.
Exactly. And so it's like with a Mitch Hedberg, it's like I would never do jokes like that, but to watch him and how he structures the joke, that's the information that you take away. It's like he is one of my favorites. He's the fucking, one of the greats, but it's like I would never want to be that comic. I want to take tools from that comic. And
I could laugh at Mitch all day. If you put Mitch, I don't care what you put. I'm laughing at what is this joke about wearing a turtleneck is like having a very weak person trying to choke you.
Oh yeah, he's trying to bring turtleneck and a backpack.
And a backpack, a weak person trying to bring you down. Yeah. Escalators are never broken; they're just stairs. Just stuff like that is things that I think about.
My favorite one was somebody asked me if I had a frozen banana. I said no, but then I wanted a regular banana later, so I said yeah.
It's just dope.
But it's also a lot of it's his delivery, because he was a heroin addict for. That's what killed him, I think. And it's just that delivery that he has, that slow pace, kind of like, you're on this trip with me, and it gets everybody engaged.
He has some of the worst stage presence out of any comedian. He wore sunglasses. He kept his head down.
He would close his eyes most of the time.
Because he had stage fright.
Yeah.
And for that, seeing that, and then knowing how well his writing was, he overcame all of that by just his writing.
Yeah. Like he could have just have gone to a writer's room and just done that as his career, but he took it on stage, and tried to face that fear of, being on stage. And and that shows the brilliance of him, is because he knows he has stage fright. He knows he closes his eyes most of the time. And then he has that joke where, the crowd that I drew on the inside of my eyelids is enjoying this. It's like,
I've never heard that one, actually.
It's fucking brilliant,
I used to do drugs. I still do, but I used to too. Yeah. That's one of the most brilliant written jokes that I've ever seen in my life.
It's insane. It really is. Because, like, like Mitch Hedberg and Doug Stanhope, who's my favorite comedian, they used to tour together, back
Oh, I
in the
didn't know
day.
that.
Yeah, and they have such different styles. Doug Stanhope has more of a style that, I try to have on stage, where you're going on this long kind of monologue, telling a story and then tell, how you see it and this and that. Whereas Mitch Hedberg was very sliced up,
One
sliced
liner
bread.
after one. He'll give you 60 jokes in an hour if you let him.
Exactly. But like Stanhope, one of my favorite bits he has is he talks about how, he's watching football and they all have the little what do you call it? The pink ribbons for breast cancer awareness. And then he mentions it and then he goes into this huge fantasy about how he's watching football and he thinks about being there and running down on the field and raping one of the football players and this and that. And he goes, I just had sex with this man unprotected. Like, do I have AIDS and this and that? And he goes, and then I come out of this beautiful fantasy and I see the ribbon. And he goes, now I have to think about breast cancer too? But it's so long. It's like a 20-minute bit of him painting this picture. And then at the end of it, he just hits you with that whole, like, fucking breast cancer as well.
Exactly.
Which is so different than Mitch Hedberg.
For sure. That's the story versus the and to tie it back to Jerry, like he doesn't give you a feeling of he's going to land badly. And I feel
What do you mean by that?
Like that it's not his jokes always land perfectly, like with the punchline that makes the audience laugh.
Okay.
He never there's a couple bartenders out in Vegas, Cristiano Del Pesh, and I forget his brother. I want to say Rafael Del Pesh, but I don't think that's his name. They're flair bartenders.
Okay.
So they like juggle.
Yeah.
And they do all these competitions. And Cristiano is the best, like one of the best in the world, if not the best in the world. But when I watch him, he's so good that it looks effortless to him.
Yeah.
So he's just sitting there like doing these things and and it's great because he's perfect.
Yeah.
But to me, I look at it and I'm like, there's no way that you're ever going to drop a bottle. And to me, that doesn't get me excited because he just has this like perfect balance and these perfect throws that he has.
Okay.
And I look at somebody else, like this guy named Dario Damio, who like takes these risks and throws these bottles back and like kicks it back up and catches it up here. And I'm like, you're playing the edge of you're playing at your edge. It looks like for Jerry, to me, it looks like he's so perfect with it. There's no chance of his car going off the rail.
Gotcha.
So as an audience member, as I'm looking at that, there's no emotion attached to that going, oh, where is he going? Oh, is he not doing this? So it just, and that's what I need as an audience for me to laugh. I have to be tricked. You can't just be great all the time for me to bust out laughing. I have to feel like maybe your car is going to crash here or maybe you're going to drop a bottle for me to even be interested. So I typically look at comedy in the same way.
Yeah.
If you're not playing your edge or you're not going in a direction or misdirection, not in the sense of like just the joke structure, but if you're not leading me somewhere to set me up to go over here, there's no feeling that I get.
So, I mean, the way that I can compare it's almost like a conversation. When you have a genuine conversation with somebody, you guys are just going. You don't know where it's going or anything like that. But if you're talking to somebody who's super robotic in their answers and you feel like, did they get a transcript of this before they started talking to me? Like, what the hell is this? It's a different type of engagement. You wanna see where it goes and make it feel as organic as possible. And that's another reason why I love Doug Stanhope, is because he's a drunk. He drinks all the fucking time. And like, I've seen one of his specials. He's in the middle of a bit, and then, like, I don't remember what got him to say this, but then he just goes, I see a lot of people here who were here for the first show. He goes, and I know you're sitting there going like, oh, those are a lot of new jokes. And he goes, yeah, just remembered.
That's
and it's the organicness. Like, he just seems like he's up there talking. Like, if you caught him at a bar and you're sitting next to him, like, that's that guy. That he's just fucking going and, being crazy with everything. But like with a Seinfeld, to talk to him, it almost seems like he would be robotic.
For sure. It's meticulously,
yeah.
he's written it front, back. He knows it front, back. And that's not a diss.
It's not a bad thing.
It's perfect for what he does, and he's one of the best in the world for that. It's just not entertaining for me.
But I mean,
there's no surprise.
And I've always heard from, comics who have been in it 10 years or something like that. They say, I tell them how long I've been in stand-up, and they go, for where you are right now, what you want to do is hammer out a 5-minute set. Beat it to death. Make sure everything is as tight as it can be. And do that for a long time. He's like, because, the comics who see you every night are going to hate you. You're going to hate it after a while. But you got to get it as tight as possible. So there is an element of being robotic with it, but making it still seem genuine every single time you say it.
So are these comics older? You said they've been in the game for a while, right?
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that 5-minute bit thing is trash. Not them.
So?
Yeah, because that's old school. That was if you were getting on late night.
Mm-hmm.
That, to me, that was if you were getting on a late night show. You need a 5-minute set to get on a late night show. If you're a comedian and you only have 5-minute set, a perfect 5-minute set, I can't book you to open.
But do you think, like, the way I take it is not like, this is the only 5-minute set like you ever do. But it's like in your early stages, to hammer out a 5-minute set like this, you can take it anywhere in front of any crowd and know you're going to kill because it's that tight. Expanding, getting a 20 or 30 or an hour, you do the same thing with those chunks and you tighten it up the same way. You know what I'm saying? Where it like gives you the skill to get these bits, make them work, know they work, and then move on from there. Because that's what I'm always afraid of, is that I'm going to change up material too much. I'm never going to get comfortable with anything that I have. So if somebody says, hey, come do a feature for me, that I either have to wing it and trust that I'm funny, or I have to have this tight 15 that I can do in that spot.
I get you a lot, and I have this conversation with a lot of my friends. I'm a firm believer that the only thing in the beginning you need to get comfortable with is being on stage, finding out your point of view, figuring out who you are, what you want to interpret on stage. Again, we talked about this. Yeah. I don't think the jokes matter because in a year, say you get the tightest 5-minute set you could ever get. In a year, you're gonna want to throw it in the trash because it's trash. Yeah. If in a year you were talking about 5-minute, get your 5-minute set and bang it out forever. And I was like, I talk to my friends about this all the time. I'm a firm believer that the only thing you need to worry about, especially at the beginning, is stage presence, your point of view, and getting comfortable on stage. Because you're going to bomb. You get the best set that you ever could put together. It's still going to suck comparative to what you're going to be later.
Yeah.
Not to anybody else. Comparative to what in the next year, what you're going to write, you're going to take that and throw it away.
But don't you think, and it goes back to what I was saying about like, not leaving well enough alone. It's like, let's say the two opposites, like somebody kind of like you go up, you're always rewriting shit, you're always coming up new shit on stage every time. With me, I try to get that set, I hammer it in for, several months, and then I kind of move on to new shit and hammer it down. Do you think when it comes to like doing a special or something, that maybe I'd have a easier time getting together an hour that I know is going to be really good, blow it all there, as opposed to you who kind of has to, think about, oh shit, now I got to go back to the archives and figure out if I want to bring this to that special or this, or if I want to riff for the entire hour. Or...
Ali Sadiq, you know who Ali Sadiq is? He did his special sitting down in a chair, and he never tells the same jokes twice. Never tells the same stories twice. It's all about what he feels and how he feels. He's been doing comedy for 20 years after he got out of jail. I don't know if it's going to be easier or harder for me to put together. Like, the editing part is the easiest part for me. It's just whatever I wanted to tell. So I could take five 5-minute bits or 10 5-minute bits and put them together and write it out. And that's the easiest part to me because I know the jokes work.
Yeah.
I know the story works. I just get the story tied up, and in a month I'll be able to do it. But I'm looking like realistically.
Yeah.
How many comedians, if somebody said, hey, in 2 years I want you to have a special for Comedy Central, you would probably be like, please don't make me do that.
Yeah.
Why would I want to do this to myself, being so new in the game to do this? And if you're not doing late night, like nobody's really doing late night comedy anymore. Like for anybody, that's not a realistic thing that people do. You're more than likely going to be in a process where you're going on tour, going from state to state, performing in front of different audiences. And sometimes your 5-minute bit that works in Las Vegas might not work in Nebraska. It's about being able to, on your feet, move, or you're getting into, I couldn't imagine having a 5 minutes that is structured out, or 15 minutes that I have perfectly meticulously put out. And in the first 2 minutes, it doesn't go well. Somebody drops a drink or something. I've worked in the bar industry, so I know things go wrong. Being able to adjust and adapt on your feet, to me, is more important than having something written out that's perfectly because if it doesn't go well, your brain, and you're not comfortable going well, your brain's gonna go, oh shit,
you get that,
shit.
You get that hot feeling in the back of your head.
I love that feeling. That is my favorite feeling because it shows what do you got? What are you made of? When the jokes fail, when the shit's going all wrong, that's to me what makes a true comedian.
Yeah. And I mean, I get that because it's like, I had a guest spot not too long ago. Adam Dominguez got it at Backstop.
Good dude, really good dude.
Great dude. And before I went to the guest spot, it was like later on that night, I went to the open mic at Free Zone. I was like, all right, I'm going to work out this chunk of material, make sure I memorize it. And, so I went up there, ate my dick the entire 5 fucking minutes. And it was like after the first 2 jokes didn't land, and my girl was there. She was like, after those first 2 jokes didn't land, she was like, you were just saying the words. She was like, everybody could tell that you were just fucking over it. And I was like, I was, and it's because I know where it's supposed to land. And then, so I left there, and I'm 30-minute drive to fucking Boulder City. I'm shitting myself. I'm like, this chunk of material is shit. Like, I'm going to go up here with a fucking audience and I'm going to bomb in front of like 30 people. Like, and I'm freaking out. Then I get there, 2 comedians go up and the audience wasn't really feeling them. And I'm like, oh, fuck, here we go. Like, now I got to eat my dick again. I get up there and I actually did really well. And so it's like, that's kind of a head fuck for somebody, like I said, who hammers out material like that, because 2 hours ago I did this material and ate it the entire time, and now I'm here and I'm fucking getting a great reaction, probably one of the best sets I've ever done. And it's like there is some benefit to knowing your material and knowing how it goes, but then there's a lot of knowing how to just go with it, think on your feet, take material that in a different direction on the spot, which I don't have. I get married to my material very quickly.
I definitely don't. I kill all my darlings. Everything gotta go. If it's not, if it can be a killer set, it can be the funniest thing in the world to the audience. And if it's just something I'm not feeling, it's hard for me to fake authenticity. I know that about myself. If it's not something that's I'm being authentic about or telling the truth about or something that means something, they're going to be able to tell. Yeah. So I'm definitely going to bomb if it's something that I don't care about, that I don't want to do, because I'm not going to do it. Yeah. Trust me, I've tried. With that downsides of having a big dick joke, I knew how bad it was. That's like one of the first things that I ever wrote. And I wrote probably 200 punchlines. I wrote it every single way possible, knowing that eventually I'm never going to use this again. It's just learning, how do I adapt when it doesn't go well? How is the audience going to take this? How am I going to be up there when you get that hot feeling in the back of your neck when everybody's looking at you like crazy? And that was one of the benefits of that I think of me starting comedy in LA open mics as opposed to out here. LA open mics are some of the worst open mics in the entire world. You get a box, you get a room. where it's literally just comedians. There's no other people, and comedians are not going to laugh at your jokes at all. Because most of the time they're haters. And the second, so if you get a giggle from a comedian in a room, you're doing great. So I would just go and perform and not really care about the reaction, because the only person that I'm caring about judging it is me. So I would go up on stage, do a joke, see how it landed, see how I felt about the thing, go home, rewrite it. So it just, and then coming out to here, like open mics out here and performing out here in Vegas is, to me, easier. I have a real audience.
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, there are those mics where it's mostly
but I still got the bartender. I still got some. I'm talking about in open mics in LA, like Fourth Wall. Fourth Wall. I used to perform at Fourth Wall in LA probably 3 times a day. I used to do 4 to 5 open mics a day for 6 months straight. All I used to do was bartend, go perform at I would bartend, get off work, go to the gym, go to open mic, go hit 3 or 4 open mics, leave there, go to Starbucks and write, charge my cell phone, hit my underarms in the bathroom, and then I would go write for 2 or 3 hours, go back, then go to Laugh Factory or Comedy Store. That was my routine for 6 months straight. So learning about myself was the easiest. It's like 5 minutes. I don't know who's been successful. Who recently have you seen have been successful at hammering out a 5-minute set perfectly, and then they got called up to do a late night set for somebody? Name me a person.
I mean, you're right.
No. I'll wait. Show me somewhere where this has been successful, and then I'll show. Because old school dudes, I met Marlon Wayans in a club that I used to go to in LA, and I was like, "Hey, I'm new to comedy. Can you any advice for me?" And I love Marlon Wayans to death, but he did me so wrong. He put his hand on my shoulder for a good 4 minutes while he turned around and talked to some women and some other people. Literally, he's just standing there, and his hands sitting on my shoulder, and I'm just standing there. And I'm like, I want this advice, so I'm not gonna go anywhere. But he's not looking at me. He just went over there and then he turned back to me after 4 minutes, and the girls end up walking past, and he goes, "Get you 5 minutes. Get you a 5-minute set, and hammer it out as much as you can." And I looked at him and I'm like, this is the advice that I waited for. I know. And for him, it is what he had to do, because he's been in the game 30 years. That was the thing you needed to do. Have a 5-minute set. But that, to me, is in the hopes that somebody's going to pluck you from a vending machine with a claw and then grab you. Oh, this is the best set I've ever seen. And then grab you and pull you over here. Not for me, though.
And it's interesting because I think of comedy, because I work in the weed industry, like I told you, and I think about these two industries very similar, because the weed industry is relatively new. So when I first got into it, there wasn't a handbook on how to work in this industry, because I make concentrates, like I make dabs and stuff like that. And so there was no handbook on how to do my job. They were like, we can give you some tips. We could tell you kind of how you do it, but for the most part, experiment. Do what you can. If you find something new that really works, then we'll add that to the manual. But for the most part, we're all just winging it. And I feel like that's how stand-up is. It's like nobody can tell you how to do what you're doing. They can give you some tips. They can say this is kind of how you have to approach it. But for the most part, you just got to have to figure it out. And everybody, not everybody, but the people who are successful figured it out in their own way. They can have overlapping, tips and tricks, but they all took it in their own direction. And I see it very similar. And that's what in a sense scares me about stand-up, is that I got to figure this shit out.
What? That's the most exciting thing in the world, is figuring it out.
It's daunting, because stand-up is all I've ever wanted to do, So it's like, I have so much personal shit riding on it, so it's like,
take that. You got to figure out a way to get that pressure off.
Yeah. And that's what it is. It's just pressure. And it's like, because I don't like I like working in the weed industry, it's the best job I've ever had. But after doing stand-up, it's another job, and I don't want that 9 to 5 shit anymore. So if I could just get paid to do stand-up, That's all I'm looking for.
Yeah,
I don't want to be.
$400 for 15 minutes sounds a lot better than four
Oh
hundred
yeah.
dollars for 8 hours, don't
Oh yeah.
it?
And it's like I don't want to be famous. I don't want to be the next fucking Seinfeld or whoever. I want to be kind of like Doug Stanhope, where like not a whole lot of people know him outside of comedy. You
Hmm.
know, like if you're in the comedy
You
circle,
know who
you
he
know
is.
who he is. But the regular people who say, "Oh, I like stand up," it's like who are your favorites? They go Kevin Hart. They go all these real mainstream guys.
Hmm.
Stanhope is outside of that. He has his fan base. He makes a living. He does well. That's all I ever want. You know.
Take that prey. You gotta figure out the take. I see. I never wanted to do stand up. Never. I've always been a fan of it. I just never thought that I was gonna do it. My
Yeah.
brother, I have a little brother. He's a year younger than me, and his best friend. They've been doing comedy since I was like, since they were 14 years old.
Really.
Yeah, back home in Indiana. So I never. It was never a thing on my mind. I was bartending. And I didn't realize that, like, people used to tell me all the time, you should be on TV, you should do stand up, you should do all this stuff. And I was like, this is never, no, ever, never, never, never.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that I loved bartending so much because to me, it was a stage.
Mm.
You are the person on
Yeah.
stage. You are making jokes with everybody. You
Yeah.
are the person. You're just serving them alcohol while you're doing it.
Yeah.
So I
Which
used to
helps.
crack, so I used to crack jokes and do that stuff all the time. So my stage presence came from being able to talk to people during bartending all the time, and I didn't realize the correlation. So the first time I ever did stand up, I killed, like, murder,
Mm.
and a lot of times after that, I bombed. Like right
Yeah,
after that,
yeah.
because you think you're good, you're like, "Oh, this is so easy." And then you bomb every single time after
Yeah.
that, and then I went into the studying and the craft of it and learning it. But it was never. I think that's why I don't have any pressure because it was never a goal of mine.
Yeah.
It's just something that I happen to love doing, happen to be good at doing,
Yeah.
and if there was never another stage for me to get on, I'm comfortable writing. I would comfortable be sitting in the Starbucks for 8 hours a day, literally writing jokes, writing songs, writing anything that I can. Because even if you are a stand-up comic, what's the most you're going to perform a day? An hour?
Yeah.
You got 23 more hours to do. You got to write. So
Yeah.
if I figured if I focused on the writing portion of it, then I wouldn't have to worry about the going on stage and performing because you're only especially us in Vegas, we're getting 5 to 15 minutes a day.
Yeah.
I focus on that writing.
And like throughout school and just like in your younger years before you did stand up, were you always like an outgoing type of person where you could talk to anybody or like class clown type?
Not really a class clown, but my mother, I definitely got it from my mother. My mother can talk to anybody. And I used
Okay.
to hate it. Like
Yeah.
grocery stores, she'll talk to the person in front, behind, the cashier. So it all came from, like, I think I was programmed to do stand up. Like it was
Yeah.
just something that has always been something that was going to be what I was going to do. I just didn't know. So
Yeah.
wax on, wax off. You're
Oh,
learning
yeah,
these
yeah.
things. I learned social skills from my mother and how to talk to people. I learned stage presence from bartending,
Mm.
and like it just literally. And I've been writing since I was like 8 years old. I remember writing, like trying to be a rapper when I was like 8 years
Yeah,
old.
yeah.
not doing really well, but just
No.
I just remember being in the basement, like, and it's always just something that is correlated to help me be the stand-up comedian that I am now. I don't take
Gotcha.
it too seriously.
Yeah.
There's times when I go on stage and people laugh, and I'm like, man, I did. In my mind, when I get home, I'm
Yeah.
like, this was so bad. They're just laughing. They're laughing at my personality more than my jokes, and knowing that about myself just
Yeah.
helps me every day get better.
Yeah. And I think that's the difference, like with me, because I don't have this kind of, like, Roscoe. We know a lot of these comics who, their personality grabs people when
Mhm.
they're on stage. I'm the exact opposite. Like with my type of stage presence, I'll pace a little bit. I have the very deep monotone voice. So my jokes have to be good because there's nothing else that anybody is paying attention to except for what I'm talking about because there's nothing going on with me. I'm not a character on stage. You know what I mean? And so that's another level of pressure I feel like I have with my writing it's like I got to make sure it's good because like I don't have something that I can lean on a little bit, like, you know, wild act outs or anything like that. It's just me and my words. And if I'm not catching them with my words, they're not paying attention at all.
Mm.
And also it's like I've always been, you know, shy, socially awkward type of guy when I was growing up. So getting on stage was fucking crazy to me, you know, because I was a kid that if I had to read out loud in class,
Mm-hmm.
everybody fucking hated it because I was very soft and I'm just trying to, and I have dyslexia, so I'd fuck up the fucking words and all of that. I'm just trying to get through it, you know? And, you know, if I had to do a presentation, it's the same way. I'm nervous, I'm sweating, and I'm stiff and just trying to get through it. Getting on stage was the scariest thing for me. It's like I had to break that because it's like I couldn't imagine it.
Mm.
The weirdest thing, because I was always afraid of freezing up, not remembering what I'm supposed to remember, and just standing up there awkwardly. My first time on stage, it was at Noreen's.
Oh,
I got up there, I went through my material, I got maybe one guy to chuckle at one joke, and I got off, and it hit me like this high. It was the weirdest thing. It was like I literally felt high from it, and I was like, "Holy shit!"
that's amazing.
Like that. This is what I need to do. But for the first 6 months, maybe, you know, 4 to 6 months, I was stiff while I was on stage, and I'm just getting through my material and like trying to fucking go. And now I've been up there enough that I can relax, and it's, you know, it's nothing crazy anymore. But it was that hurdle that I had to get over first, was having people look at me, because I've never wanted to be that guy. I've never been that guy
That's
to
interesting. Like
gather
you
the
always
room.
wanted, you never had the stage presence but you've always wanted to be a stand-up
Yeah,
comic.
yeah.
That's just crazy.
It's wild, and but that's the thing that kept me from doing it for so long. Because I lived in California, I lived in Colorado, which have open mic scenes, and I never went because I was just terrified of going. It was the stage presence. I was like, I'm gonna get up there, I'm gonna freeze, and that's the worst thing I can think of, is just freezing up there. But then when I moved out here, like I don't know what it was, like it just
Something bit
something
you
clicked, you know, and I was just like, I gotta do it. You know, if I don't do it, I'm always gonna regret that I
for
didn't do it.
sure.
So I jumped up there, and then that high that it gave me, because like I said, I have an addictive personality. So like I felt so good after I got off stage that I have to get up all the time now, and it kept me going back. And eventually, the stage presence thing isn't an issue, or like the stage fright
Hmm.
isn't an issue anymore. And then now I'm like focusing on the craft more, because at first it was just like, get up there, just get up and
When
do
you
your
say
thing.
focus on the craft, what are those things you do to focus on that?
It's a lot of writing. Like, how do I how do I create a joke? You know what I mean? It's like I and that's why I like doing this podcast, and I like to talk to comics in general, because I get a bunch of different advice from a bunch of different comics. Sometimes it lines up, sometimes it doesn't, but it gives me the chance to pick what can work for me
Hmm.
out of all of this, and create, you know, my own little, you know, bundle of what stand up is, you know. And so, and then also just the minor things about stage presence, you know, because I'm an awkward guy when I stand up there. I mess with the microphone a lot. And then I noticed that in my recordings. I was like, leave the microphone alone. Okay. Then I don't know what to do with this hand. So I'm putting it in my pocket. I'm taking it out again, putting it back, taking it out. And I'm like, okay, don't do that. And it's like just these,
That looks like nervousness,
yeah.
and the audience can sense that
And they
immediately.
know it immediately. And so it's just these little things about how to be better as a comic. That's what
Well,
I,
you're definitely taking the steps
yeah.
to get.
Yeah.
That's dope.
But
I,
I'm only about a year in. So like I
Me too.
understand. Oh, really?
Yeah, probably not even. I don't think I've done it might be a full year now,
Okay.
because I did. I said I did 6 months in LA right before COVID,
Mm.
and then COVID happened, and everybody was going on. Remember, everybody was doing the Zoom stuff.
Yeah.
I was like, "There's no way I'm
Same.
not doing this." I
Yeah.
was like, "I'm gonna spend all this time." I didn't know when we were going to open back up, but I was like, "I don't care if we don't open back up. Oh well."
Yeah.
But I'm just gonna go deep into writing, and I'm addicted to chess. Like
Mm.
I have 30,000 games online of chess.
Goddamn.
Yeah. It's so I had to take the chess app off of my phone, and every time I caught myself like wanting to go to chess,
Yeah.
I looked at a comic article. I looked at I just wrote, and I just took I read somewhere it was a Spanish app, and I think it said some kind of Spanish app. The fastest way to learn Spanish is immersion, which means if you go over to Spain, you're going to learn Spanish faster because everybody speaks Spanish.
Yeah.
Everything you see is Spanish. I was like, let me see if this works with comedy. So all I did for ever was like read comedy books, read comedy articles, watched stand up, thought about. That's the only thing that I fill my brain with.
Yeah.
And it helped me get to the next level of being like, oh, this is not as easy. You learn the matrix. You get inside the matrix, and you're like, oh, it's not really that hard.
Yeah.
And everybody has a different way to do it, but none of that matters because their way won't work for you. Yeah. The only way that matters is what works for you. And what works for me is constantly being in that writing mode and writing zone. And it's funny because I talk to you outside. Like, a lot of people think that when I go out to stand up, I don't like talking to people, or I don't watch their sets and I don't care.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's genuinely because I'm in a writing mode. I'm in that creative mode. And I'm not about to break it for somebody to tell me some drama about some stuff that I don't give a fuck about. Yeah. I'd rather stay home and write as opposed to being out there. So it's just, it works for me.
Yeah. But it was interesting earlier when you said that, you know, advice or comments that somebody has about your set, that you kind of just write it off.
It's gone.
That's
one ear and out the other.
See, that's interesting to me because I'm like the nerdy like schoolboy who's like, oh, just give me everything. Like,
who you learning from?
Everybody.
No, and exactly.
You know, I'm learning from everybody, but that's
not good.
But I feel like it can be.
No, but okay. Look at the if it could be beneficial, let's look at it in school. You talk about the school, the nerd boy, right? Yeah. You go up there, and then you have somebody that's not as smart or doesn't know math as well as you do, that's giving you advice on a formula. Yeah. You could literally go home and be learning that for no reason.
Yeah. But that's the thing. It's like I take advice more seriously if I think the comic is funny. Like, there are a lot of comics in this scene that I don't think are funny. So if they tried to give me advice, I'd be like, all right. And then I would just write it off. But if I think you're funny and you give me some advice, it's not to say that I'll take that as gospel, but I'll take it and I'll think about it. You know, next time I'm writing, next time I'm on stage, I'll keep it in mind and maybe try something, you know, and if it works out and I'm like, okay, this is an avenue I can go, then I'll start incorporating it. It's like, even with my girlfriend, she's not a stand-up, you know, not a comic, you know, she's a musician.
She knows you though.
But she knows me. And I feel like she's a professional audience member because I've taken her around these fucking mics for months. And she gets to see everybody do stand-up. She sees me do the same set all the time, or, you know, whatever. So she has sat down, or like when we're done, she'll sit me down and she'll be like, okay, the way you said this, whatever line it is, it hit my ear weird. She goes, so change up the wording a little bit. And I do it, and I get a better reaction. I'm like, okay. It's been a very interesting thing, like getting advice from comics and then get advice from an audience member, which she is.
And somebody that loves and cares about you and knows. But I think the difference is why it's hitting different, though, is because not only does she know you, she knows what your goals are. She knows what your stand-up. She knows all of these things in the time that you take and what you're doing. And you could say something different and she'll know that you said it different because she heard you last time. Yeah. As opposed to somebody just telling me, hey, man, I loved what you did. Okay, I'm not rude about it or anything, but it genuinely, I don't know after they say it to me, I have no clue what they said. It's just because I'm the only gospel. Because I'm the only gospel that I can listen to. Yeah. Because if I've gotten to this point listening to myself or learning from the greats of like the Richard Pryor, the Eddie Murphy, Martin Lawrence, Mitch Hedberg, the people that I actually look up to, I'm not competing with open micers. I'm competing with
The greats.
I'm competing with Martin Lawrence Run Tell That special. I'm
Yeah.
competing with Eddie Murphy Raw. I'm
Raw.
competing with in my mind. I'm not I'm not on this level. Not to say I
Yeah.
am an open micer. That's what I do, but I'm
Yeah.
not my competition is not that. So I love when people go up there and kill and murder. That has nothing to do with my progress or what I got going on.
Yeah. And that's what I don't get about drama and jealousy. It's like if a comic does well up there, like I want them to do well because I want to go up there and I want to do well. So like if I see somebody that's my friend, you know, like Roscoe or Sam, you know, whoever, if they get up there and they fucking kill, I'm happy for them.
For
And I'm like,
sure.
dude, fuck yeah, that was amazing, whatever, because I want to be there, you know.
Mm,
But I see a lot of people, and that was one of the things that blew my mind about getting in the stand up scene here. There's a lot of fucking drama, and I didn't realize that,
I don't even notice it.
dude. I just hear it kind
Get
of
you some
peripheral.
AirPod Pros, dog, and put your hood up. You don't gotta worry. I listen to jazz. At most open mics, I listen to jazz, man.
That's funny.
I can't do it's multiple reasons. I'm
Yeah,
in my head, I'm in my zone, I'm in my writing
yeah,
mode, and I don't ever want to pick up subconsciously
yeah,
anything anybody else
yeah.
does.
See, that's the thing. I'm such a fan of comedy that like when I go to these open mics, I just want to watch. You know, it's like being able to go to a comedy show every night, you know, whether, you know, it's fucking amazing people or somebody you don't know. It's like I want to go there because I love stand up so much and I want to fanboy out a little bit, you know?
Mm,
So I go up there, I do my set, and then when I get off, I'm just a fan now. And so I get to sit there and just enjoy my night. I get to watch some good, some bad, but that's it. But I'm such a fanboy. Like I really am.
that's good for the that's great.
Yeah.
And it's for everybody. Just for
Yeah.
me, I'm not a fan. I used to be a big fan of comedy.
Yeah.
I had to kill that.
Really.
Yeah, Shonda Rhimes. She wrote Grey's Anatomy, and she writes a lot of shows.
Okay.
And she has her favorite sitcom. I forget what it is, but she studies it. She used to love it as watching it entertaining.
Mm.
But once she went into it and studied that sitcom and learned how they did it and how to process, she can't watch it with entertainment anymore.
Mm.
But the skills that she learned from it made her a better writer.
Yeah.
So me, I can't watch if I watch like one of the one that I have to Run Tell That by Martin Lawrence is
Mm-hmm.
it will forever be the best special in my mind.
Yeah.
It's the funniest thing that I've ever. That is the pinnacle of comedy for me. So one of these days I'm going to go through it and watch it as not like entertainment. I'm going to break down and go, how did he transition from this? How did he do
Yeah.
this? And it's going to kill it for me. I know it's going to kill it for me, but it's going to make me a better comedian
Mm-hmm.
in the long run.
And that's the thing. I've had that same thing ever since I've done stand up. Any stand up that I watch now, I see it differently. Like I'm not just an audience member anymore. I'm not just somebody who loves comedy. Like I am still kind of, but I'm also looking at it in a different way. I see where they're going sometimes, and that's that's the thing that I ruin a lot if I watch a stand up special with my girlfriend.
Mm-hmm.
She's all into it. We're watching whatever, and I'll laugh before the punchline because I know where he's going with it, and she fucking hates it. Like we cannot watch stand up together very much because I know where they're going. Maybe even more than 50% of the time, but it's that other, whatever 40-50% when they catch me off guard. That's when I laugh genuinely, is because I can't predict it. But I hate it now. I do hate stand-up now because it's like, because I love it so much, I want to be surprised. And it's hard to be surprised now because I know
you
where
need to be
people...
watching some better comedians if you can guess their punchline.
But even then, you kind of, because as a stand-up, you kind of pick up on subtleties, like these subtleties of where they're going. And then you're like, okay, I know who this stand-up is. There's a good chance he's going here. It's like, and sometimes I'm close, but not exact. And sometimes they catch me off completely. But it's like, I don't know. It's these things that I picked up. Even with the open micers around here, they're going on. And even if it's somebody I love, who is really good, It's like sometimes I just know where you're going with it.
Mm,
But it's because I know who you are as a person. I know your kind of style when you're on stage. So it's kind of easy for me to predict it. And
gotcha.
I do hate it. I
Yeah,
hate it about
Roscoe
myself.
does that to me all the time. He'll know. He knows that I typically I'll have I'll have different setups and different stories and different things. I never, like I said, I I've never done the same set twice or done the
That's
same
wild.
jokes in the same order. But he'll try to guess where I'm going from where I start,
Yeah.
and I'll hear him laugh I'll hear him laugh at the beginning because sometimes I'll be over there, all the way over there, and
Yeah.
I'm still getting back over here. And he'll be like, I don't know how you got there, but I'm glad you got there. And it was funny because you
Yeah.
got there and he knew where I was going the whole time. But
Yeah.
I typically, I'm with it. I'm not a big fan. I don't watch a lot of stand up specials anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Since I started doing stand up, I don't either.
I can't. It's
Yeah.
my I can't watch it because I don't want to pick it up.
Yeah. And I do it for that exact reason. Like, I don't mind watching open micers because I feel like, you know, there are 50 people doing that kind of joke. You know what I mean? So it's easy for me to watch them because there's a good chance I wasn't going to go there anyway. But with a professional comic, with a special and all of that, there's a good chance they're going to talk about something that I'm going to think of it, like going in this direction, or, you know, a couple tags of what they were talking about. And there's a good chance I'll pick it up in my writing. And that's what scares me. So I don't watch. The last stand-up special I watched was Dave Chappelle's last.
I was about to say
Yeah.
I was about to say I lie. I watch all of Dave Chappelle's specials,
Yeah.
and the only reason he's a classically trained theater,
Mhm.
like he's theater trained,
Yeah.
and his stage presence, his vocal inflections, his way that he can maneuver the audience.
Yeah.
I learned the most about him, not his jokes, just about how he handles an audience. I watched it. He has a 4 hour
Yeah.
like.
I've seen
he's
that one.
sitting on a chair.
Yep.
4 hours sitting on a
Yeah.
chair talking to an audience. And I
Yeah.
don't know if you know, have you ever sat down on stage on a stool?
I usually sit down when I'm bombing.
It's one of the hardest things to do,
Yeah.
and it's one of my favorite things to do. It's to
Yeah.
me, it just gets you in that. It gets me in that mode of like
Mhm.
not having to worry about anything. And when I first started, I didn't know how to hold the mic,
Mm.
so I didn't know. So I literally meticulously would just for a month, I just sat down. I had the mic in a stand. I didn't touch the mic. I worked
Yeah.
on these things, not even the jokes. Forget the jokes or bombing. I need to work on how to hold the microphone.
Yep.
How do I sit? How do I stand? How do I get this timing? And I
Yeah.
just went through the process of learning all of these things before I even cared about jokes. I couldn't imagine if I would have went up there trying to worry about all that while also trying to go, oh, I need to get this 5 minutes together
Yeah.
because it's going to suck anyway.
But it's funny. I've always, like I said, I've always been such a fan of comedy that, like, watching comedy podcasts, stuff like that, where professional comics talk about the business. There was one thing I always heard about, like, you know, an amateur versus a professional by how they treat the mic stand.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one thing I knew going into it. And so in my first set, you see me, I take the mic out and I put it behind me. And it's like that, because that's a sign of, like, I know what I'm doing.
Mhm.
And then you go into it. But then I fuck it up because I don't know what to do with this hand. And, like, you see it just, like, hovering and doing this shit. And I'm like, I'm nervous.
You just put it in
and-
your pocket.
Yeah. But it's
But
like,
those are things you pick up by watching yourself, and you've learned, you've seen
Oh, yeah.
what you do and how it looks to you.
Yep. It wasn't on the podcast, but when I had Roscoe over, one of the times we were hanging out outside, he said that one of the like writing advices you gave to him was don't start with the funny, start with the interesting. I had never heard that before, because for me it's like funny is all it should be. You know what I mean? Like, that was always in my head, is like funny is everything, so go with funny. And that's a lot of the times how my writing comes along, is like, you think of a punchline, you think of the funny first, and then you create afterwards. So expand on, like, what do you mean by start from the interesting?
Well, it's a lot of facets of why I think that way. If you start, basically break it down. If you start from the funny, you have nowhere to go.
What do you mean?
If you
Because the funny is the end.
Yeah, you got nothing else.
Gotcha.
If you start from the funny, you already got the funny. There's nowhere else to go. Two, I was watching Trevor Noah. He was on a podcast. I don't know which one it was, but Dave Chappelle did his 4 nights. He sold out 4 nights in. I'm so bad with names. Some theater in New York. That's a giant theater that I should know the name of.
Madison Square Garden.
That was probably bigger than that. He sold out. It was like some there. Well, I forget what it was, but Trevor was he was talking. He was freaking out. He was like, "Man, Dave Chappelle got me going on here. Dave Chappelle is the GOAT. I'm freaking Trevor Noah. I know I'm not on his level. What in the world is going on?" And Trevor went up to Dave and was like, "Hey, man, there's a million funny people out here. Why did you pick me to come out and open and be one of your guests to open for you?" He was like, "Anybody can be funny. You're interesting." And that helped with my mindset of like, I believe anybody can be funny. Anybody can write a joke. Anybody can go on stage and tell the joke. Anybody can do, like, if anybody can do it, not everybody can be interesting though. And Judd Apatow, the writer of Nocta, he writes a lot of things. Yeah. He has a master class that I listened to, and he got into an argument with his teacher about writing, and the teacher was like, "No, you have to write all." He thought that he was writing well, and the teacher kept giving him bad grades. And Judd Apatow tried to be a dick and went in there and like wrote the most mundane story he could in the most detailed way possible. And he threw him the paper and he got an A+ on it. He was like, "That's the type of writing that I'm looking for." I get in trouble in my stand-up a lot. And I say I get in trouble in my stand-up a lot in my sense of like, I try to I'll try to be like too jokey. Like I'll have an interesting story on stage and people their ears are glued to me and I'm getting laughs and stuff. And I'll try to insert like little jokes in there, which don't have anything to do with the story. It's just to try to get a little quick laugh because I'm not anticipating that I don't know, whatever it is. I just like throwing in jokes sometimes. Yeah. And
I mean, because that's the formula you learn when you're trying to do stand-up. It's like if you're telling a story, you got to insert these little ha-has as you go.
I do it too much sometimes. Try to get to it because it takes away from the story and what I'm getting at. Like the big laughs that I get is from having an interesting story that lands on something where they're like, "Oh my God, it's interesting." And you're getting that punch, that big punch. If I'm inserting little laughs, it's going to take away from the end. But if you start with something interesting, if you start and write every single detail about a story and not even look for the funny, just remember every single detail of the story and write it down, whether it's funny or not, don't have that mindset. Once you write down the entire story and you have all the details, once you go back, you can know where the funny points are and insert wherever you do. But if you start with I gotta find out what's funny, you might not know what's going to be funny until afterwards. You might not know what the audience is going to laugh out till afterwards. Some things that you don't find interesting that you do every single day, an audience member will look at you and be like, "What?" Prime example, I was telling my brother a story about how I used to, when I was living in my car and I used to be at Starbucks writing for 8 hours a day. And I used to get so many phone numbers in Starbucks by not even trying or paying attention because I used to always pick the table that was by the creamers.
Okay.
Women used to always have to, when you get coffee, you have to always go to the creamers, the sugars and all that thing. I was like, I had it set up to where I had, like, if I'm in the writing and I'll just, somebody would talk to me, I would break out and go there. I was talking, I was like, I had it set up like that. He was like, "I've never heard anything like that." And to me, that was just common sense of normal. Yeah. Like if you want traffic, you got to get by over there. Yeah. So it wasn't interesting to me, but writing it down or telling my brother about it, he was like, "You need to write that down." And I was like, "Oh, because you never know. So what's funny to you might not necessarily be the whole entire story." Yeah. So, and if you find the funny, then that's all you're looking for. You're not looking for anything else. you already found it.
Yeah.
To me,
No,
I'd rather be if an audience is silent because you're interesting, whether you get laughs or not, they're going to remember who you are.
Yeah. I mean, and that makes perfect sense because it's like if you have an uninteresting story that you're telling and you're trying to insert jokes here and there, they could be good jokes. People don't give a fuck.
Not a care in the world.
And it goes back to even if you're going on in the story and it's interesting and people are paying attention to you, that's all you need. You need people looking at you. You need people's attention directly on you so that when you drop the funny, everybody's got it. Because the worst, I won't say the worst, one of the worst things is to be performing in front of a crowd who couldn't care less that you're on stage talking. And they're in the back, they're on their fucking video poker or they're having conversations and they just don't give a fuck about what you're talking about. That's bad. Even worse than that, which I found out, is everybody paying attention to you and you've got nothing to say. And you're just up there babbling. And nobody gives a shit about what you're saying, but they're all looking you dead in the eyes.
I'd rather than pay attention to me saying nothing than not pay attention to me saying everything.
See, and I think that's terrible. Like everybody looking at you and you got nothing to say, because on the opposite, people not paying attention to you, you always have that out. You always have that excuse to say, well, they weren't paying attention anyway.
No.
But everybody looking at you.
That's not a good out to have. Don't program. Do not program your brain to say they weren't paying attention. No, that's a bad thought process to have. And it could be, you could go on stage.
It could be,
and
it
could be true, but that's not the
divert to that.
Hell no. You automatically go, it was me.
This was a really good conversation, man. I really appreciate it. Do you have anything you want to plug? Any social media, anything like that?
You want to follow me? I got all my sets. I got about 30 sets on Reese the Writer on Instagram, Obscure Media Group, guy we talked about earlier, Roscoe Witherspoon. We have a podcast together called The Reese and Roscoe Show.
Which is good.
You like that? Appreciate it's only we got a lot of episodes filmed. It's just the point of like running out of space. We talked about that earlier. I'm running out of gigabytes, 4K footage. Reese, I have my own podcast called What's Up with Reese. My Obscure Media Group team, like I mentioned.
Where do you find the Obscure Media?
That's coming next.
Oh, you haven't put anything out?
But
okay.
Obscure is the company that we have, and I have everything done. It's just logistically, I have a bottleneck of getting all of the footage that we filmed out because I keep running out of storage. I bought 8 different SD cards.
Gotcha.
It's not working out well. Reese the Writer on Instagram. We got Obscure Media Group coming to YouTube. We got Obscure, which everything will be posted. And Obscure Media Group Instagram, which everything will be posted there as well. Reese and Roscoe Show. What's Up with Reese? That's basically it. Tap in.
Awesome.
We working on some stuff.
Hell yeah. I respect the grind. You know, like you were talking about, is pave your own fucking way. I admire that a lot.
I appreciate that.
I do. Definitely go follow Reese on all of his shit. I'm excited for when you finally drop the Obscure Media shit. I want to see the type of sketches. But yeah, go follow Reese on all of his shit. Definitely follow me on my Instagram, _Hernandez_comedy. I can never remember. It always takes me a second.
I got you on there. I was about to say, I don't even know what Antonio!
It always takes me a minute. Like, this is the 4th episode, and I plug it every time, and I'm always like, yeah, there we go.
I appreciate you having me. This was amazing.
Dude,
Thank you so much. Anytime you want me, dog, I'll be here. This was a great...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm definitely going to, get through a bunch of the comedians in the scene, keep doing this, and then I'll always cycle around to the favorites. You know what I mean? And when I get a better computer and I get shit more set up, then I might have 2 guests at a time, so it could be the 3 of us.
You got the room for it.
Because I would love to have you, myself, and Roscoe all sitting in the same time, because you 2 are super tight. Him and I had a great conversation last time, so I feel like that would be a really good one.
I'm going to check out y'all podcast, too.
Good,
I haven't got a chance to get around to it because I've been writing, but I'm definitely going to check it out.
It was a
I look
good
forward to
fucking
what you
talk.
got in the future.
Definitely. If you're new, definitely subscribe to the SI Studios YouTube channel so that you guys get updated anytime I drop one of these podcasts. Other than that, I appreciate you guys for hanging out. Stay tuned next week. I'm not 100% sure who I'm going to have on. I'm going to have somebody on. Other than that, I love you, and we'll see you next time.